What's up, guys, and welcome to Motorcast. Today we are going to be reviewing round number 11 and 12 of the 2016-17 Formula E season. It was, of course, the final two rounds of the season from Montreal, the championship decider, and, well, what a controversial weekend we had. It was the showdown between Sebastian Buemi and Lucas di Grassi. Of course, Buemi missed the last round and the last two races in New York. He came into this round, though, with a 10-point lead over Lucas di Grassi and was very much the favourite for the title. And, we are going to be discussing exactly what happened in Montreal and just how Buemi managed to lose that to di Grassi in the end. So today I am joined with Nathan and Josh. How are you guys doing?
Very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Good. So, first of all, we'll get into race one, which, of course, took place on Saturday. Sebastian Buemi actually qualified second, just behind his title rival, Lucas di Grassi, which meant that there would have been a 7-point gap between the two of them, obviously starting side by side, but Buemi had a 10-place penalty due to battery damage after the FP2 crash. And, Josh, what did you think to that crash, and do you think that really affected Buemi sort of as we went into the weekend after that?
Yeah, I mean, that completely ruined his whole weekend, really. That one crash in practice, just offset him completely, and he really just kind of lost it as well after race one, mentally as well. And the championship was pretty much done after that, race one. It's a bit of a shame, really, because of course without that we'd have had di Grassi and Buemi on the front row for the first race, and that would have been very, very exciting. But still an exciting climax. I think even with Buemi's penalty, you still kind of felt like Buemi still had a real good chance, and we've seen him charge from the kind of midfield to back, and that's pretty much what he managed to do in race one. But I don't know what you guys thought, but maybe not quite making the progress you'd expect.
Yeah, Nathan, maybe just give your thoughts on that.
Oh, well, I mean, it was quite interesting, because I remember in the previous podcast, Joe, I asked you who you thought was going to win the championship.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
And you said Buemi. And I don't know if I said it in the podcast, but I certainly thought Buemi was going to win the championship. I mean, he's had the best form in the season. He's been winning races all the time. He still had a 10-point lead despite missing the two New York ePrix. Still had a championship lead over di Grassi. And I just thought it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win the championship. I mean, of course, the practice crash with the battery damage, dropping him 10 places to start in 12th for the first race, certainly didn't help. And that really was the start of the end, really, of Buemi's realistic chances of winning this ePrix. So, I mean, it really was Buemi's championship to lose, to be honest. And I just think the free practice crash, it's difficult to say now, but certainly I reckon that Buemi could well have won the championship if it wasn't for that free practice crash, because he certainly lost out on a lot of points because of that. But the crash, more than anything, it damaged him. It just lost his confidence in being able to take the championship lead. To be able to win the championship. So, yeah, I mean, di Grassi, I don't know if I'd really say di Grassi got lucky, but certainly Buemi, he made an uncharacteristically amount of mistakes. He made more mistakes than we're used to seeing from Buemi. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, definitely. I think the free practice crash was sort of a catalyst, I think, for the weekend, that really sort of he set off on the wrong foot, probably, and yeah, I think just put himself under a lot of pressure. Obviously, he did manage to qualify in P2, but as soon as he got that 10-place penalty, I think mentally that put him into a bad place. So yeah, race one, of course, that finished with Lucas di Grassi winning that race. So that was pretty much the perfect start to the weekend for di Grassi. He took pole, and obviously he then took the victory. So couldn't really have been much of a better start for di Grassi, and that obviously left him with a lead. But with Buemi finishing fourth in that first race before then being disqualified, yes, I guess you could say that probably gave di Grassi the advantage. But he would have thought, okay, going into this final race, I've really got to got to concentrate, but Buemi's disqualification, that really did, take a lot of pressure off di Grassi. And Josh, do you think that when we were going into the second race and saw di Grassi on the grid, sort of taking it easy, do you think that disqualification really sort of clinched the title for him?
Yeah, definitely. I think the pressure was really off then, off di Grassi. And like kind of I think Nathan was alluding to, Buemi was so strong at the start of the season, and we really never predicted this. All the way to New York, I think pretty much everyone was convinced Buemi would still be walking away with the title. But just, one of the worst weekends we've really seen for Buemi in the Formula E Championship so far. And very, very uncharacteristic. Great for di Grassi, though, to get that win because, this is only his second win of the year. He hasn't really shown complete race-winning potential so far this season, particularly not kind of leading from the front. That's not really what we're used to kind of seeing from di Grassi. So to really pull that out of the bag was real exceptional stuff from di Grassi. I think definitely helped by kind of Bird and Rosenqvist having problems in qualifying. Of course, they're the kind of two guys that could really kind of take major points away from them. But he still held off, Jean-Eric Vergne, of course, who had a great race. So a real well-earned victory there from di Grassi. But of course, with quite a slice of luck, really, with Buemi having those issues. But of course, saw him disqualified from race 1, 18 points advantage into race 2. For me, there was real little doubt that di Grassi would be walking away with the championship.
Yeah, 100%. And just whilst we're on the topic of the title, the title fight, whilst we're talking about race 1, before we get into the other drivers, we of course can't go without talking about Buemi's confrontation and just utter rampage that he went on after the race. Of course, he went storming out of his car, first of all towards Felix da Costa, who'd done nothing wrong at all. Then he went to Robin Fritz once he realised that it was actually him who he collided with on the exit of turn 2. But he didn't end there. He then went on to see Daniel Abt about his behaviour during the pit stop phase. So Nathan, what did you think about that from Buemi? Do you think it was justified, or do you think he just lost his head in the spur of the moment?
I mean, you can sort of understand why he got so angry after the race. I mean, it was the crash with Robin Fritz, of course. I mean, we know that Buemi ended up shouting at Antonio Felix da Costa initially, getting confused there over which Andretti driver it was. But you can understand Buemi's frustration. You really can, because, I mean, it was the crash with Fritz, damaged his steering, lost him some time in the first half of the race. And, of course, Buemi's fighting for a championship. I mean, I saw a lot of reaction from on social media, lots of people saying that Buemi he certainly went a bit over the top, and you certainly could agree that Buemi did get a little bit too angry and a little bit too confrontational in public and on broadcast live on the Formula E feed. But it was certainly entertaining. I don't think ill of Buemi's character because of it, because it was certainly a heat of the moment thing. I mean, if he had a chance to cool down after the race, he probably wouldn't have talked to Fritz and Abt and da Costa in quite the same way. But yes, it was a little bit too confrontational, but you can sort of understand why, because Buemi, he had a lot to fight for, and, well, a lot arguably was lost because of his crash with Robin Fritz in the first race.
Yeah, so that just about caps off the Buemi di Grassi battle for the meantime, and we're just going to sort of run through the rest of the results from race 1. So Jean-Eric Vergne, a very good second place for Techeetah, followed home by Stefan Sarazan in third. Again, a good race from him as well. Daniel Abt managed to finish fourth, and Sam Bird in fifth position as well. So Josh, a couple of standout results there for me are Jean-Eric Vergne in second, who of course then went on to win the second race, and also Sam Bird coming from 18th to 5th. So yeah, what are your opinions on first of all Techeetah's pace this weekend, and also Sam Bird coming through the field? Do you think he could have had a shot at victory maybe if he'd have had a better qualifying?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, software glitches, I believe, in qualifying, so they couldn't actually kind of run at full power. So that hampered Bird. But yeah, like you said, great recovery drive. It's been a good season for Bird. I mean, we'll talk about it more in the season review, but maybe a little disappointing that he hasn't managed to challenge for this championship, because at certain races he's looked absolutely right on it. In terms of Techeetah as well, I mean, they've looked on it all season as well, and finally rewarded with a win. That's been kind of a long time coming, not only for Techeetah, but of course for John McVerne. Took pole position in his first ever Formula E race, of course, and still hasn't won since then. But now, of course, getting that win in a race 2 was very, very impressive. And that race 1 performance as well, arguably, equally impressive. His teammate Stefan Sarazan as well, I mean, 41 years old, and, still a bit like Heidfeld, not really showing too many signs of slowing down. He, of course, switched to Techeetah mid-season, and that's looking like a really, really good decision for Stefan Sarazan to make. And, of course, especially if you kind of look at, where he came from Venturi, and you kind of look how poor Venturi are doing now, it's looking like a great switch for Sarazan. Great reward for Techeetah and for Verne, very, very well deserved there. And in terms of Bird, definitely, could have been a lot more, but still a great recovery drive.
Another notable result from the top 10 was Mitch Evans getting P7, so that was pretty good for him and the Jaguar team. First big points they've scored for a while, back since Mexico. Really, it's the first time which they've actually finished above P9. Pretty good from them, and also they were pretty close. Both drivers were close to points in the second race as well. So Nathan, do you think they've really got their act together towards the end of the season? And do you think that really gives them a little bit of momentum going into season 4?
You would certainly hope it gives them some momentum. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't expecting Jaguar to be the worst team for the entire season. Obviously, a brand new works team, but I was expecting the very nature of them being a works team to be slightly better than they have been this season. But to be fair, it wasn't even just that both drivers fluked a decent race result, because even in qualifying for the first race at least, Mitch Evans qualified in 7th and Adam Carroll qualified in 8th. So they definitely have found some pace. Maybe this track just suited them, I don't know, but they certainly seem to at the very least find some pace in these in the final couple of races. And hopefully, I mean, you would expect that with Jaguar that they will be able to develop their car quite a lot, with them being a works team for the next season. And I mean, Jaguar, I believe they did still finish last in the team's championship, but they certainly found some pace in this final race. And a very impressive performance from both of their drivers. I'd have to say that, if Jaguar, if they had a worse driver pairing, then I think they were lucky with the two drivers they had, in the sense that both of them have served Jaguar well this season, despite the fact that the car hasn't been all that quick.
Yeah, I think that could possibly come back to be good for them in season 2, because they've had two drivers constantly giving them feedback throughout the course of this season. So that's enough on Jaguar for the meantime, and that just about caps off the first race. So after that, di Grassi was on 175 points to Buemi's 157, meaning that di Grassi held an 18-point lead going into the final race. And after Buemi qualified in 14th place in the second race, when di Grassi went out for qualifying, he must have been pretty relaxed, I think, going into that qualifying session. Of course, in qualifying, Buemi actually locked up going into turn 1 and went out in the first qualifying group as well. And his teammate Nico Prost actually qualified in 7th, but would start last after a battery fire. So again, the batteries were not Edam's favourite things after this weekend, but it was Felix Rosenqvist, who was quickest in FP2, that took pole position ahead of Sam Bird. Although Bird could easily have got pole as well, and I think that pole position from Rosenqvist pretty much secured the P3 in the championship, because it really did give him the psychological advantage. Verne, Heidfeld and di Grassi made up the rest of the top 5. So di Grassi starting 9 places ahead of Buemi. I think you could pretty much say that the championship was settled there and then. But a little bit on the battle for third. Josh, do you think, as I said, that Rosenqvist getting pole ahead of Bird maybe sort of gave him that advantage before they'd even reached the checkered flag?
Yeah, I mean, they've been close, of course, all season. Bird not really having the pace really in the second race. It was a bit kind of strange to see. Lopez was actually the kind of faster Virgin Racing driver. And Lopez has, of course, been great all season and kind of matched Bird. Not really having the results to back it up, but definitely got the result, of course, for this weekend. His second podium in Formula E. Rosenqvist, of course, with a fight for the win with Verne. Didn't quite have enough to beat Jev, but still a great result for Rosenqvist to, of course, seal third in the championship, as you mentioned, ahead of Sam Bird. Great fight really in race 2. Not really between, of course, di Grassi and Buemi, but certainly a great fight for kind of first and for third as well. A great kind of standalone race, even if you do take out the kind of championship implications.
Yeah, definitely. And also in that second race, it was notable that Stefan Sarazan in the second Techeetah car actually span at the first corner, leaving himself pretty much in last place. I believe he had a small amount of contact with Antonio Felix da Costa. But, he managed to recover and actually finish in 8th place. So that capped off a great weekend for Techeetah because, of course, as you mentioned, Josh, Jean-Eric Verne took his first victory in Formula E and his first victory in any form of motorsport since 2011, which was pretty astonishing. Nathan, how impressed have you been with the Techeetah team this season?
Oh, I mean, yeah, very impressed, to be honest, considering they are a brand new team. But, I mean, you got to look at it logically, and they are using a customer Renault Edams powertrain, and we know the Renault Edams is the quickest car in the field, bar none. They won the team's championship, and yeah, I mean, Techeetah, they certainly have done well. I mean, they've got the car, or certainly they've got the powertrain at least. Jean-Eric Verne, though, he definitely has been the standout driver for Techeetah. I mean, Sarazan's got decent results over the course of the season, and I believe, didn't Marchinquois start the season in Techeetah, didn't he?
He did.
Yes. And less said about him, the better, really. But, no, the point I'm trying to make is that Techeetah, they did surprise me to a certain extent, but I would say that Jean-Eric Verne definitely was a standout driver, one of the best drivers, I think, all season, really. And I think Techeetah have got a lot to thank for Jean-Eric Verne because he certainly did carry the team to a large extent.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. And they like you mentioned, they had Marchinquois start the season off for them, and then obviously had Esteban Gutierrez. So they haven't really had a settled driver lineup for the season. Each driver has actually done 3 rounds each. Although obviously Sarazan did all of the double races, so actually ended up doing 6 races in total. But yeah, it'd be good to see Sarazan get a run next season in a settled driver lineup. Also, which you briefly mentioned, Josh, was that Jose Maria Lopez actually took a podium in the second race ahead of his teammate Sam Bird, which was pretty surprising, seeing as Bird started second and Lopez 12th in that second race. And how impressed were you with Jose Maria Lopez? Of course, he has actually he scored 1 podium before in Paris, where he finished in second place. But yeah, do you think Lopez will be retained for next season, or do you think DS Virgin will be looking for another driver?
It's a difficult one. I mean, I think they definitely should, retain Lopez. He's been, as I kind of mentioned before, right with Bird. I mean, from the very off, right, I think he was, with a great chance of kind of winning the first race in Hong Kong before he crashed out. So he's been on it really from the very start, and of course never afraid to get his elbows out. We kind of saw him give Sam Bird a bit of a barge in this race, and it's kind of done that all the way throughout the season. So it depends what the dynamic is between those two. I think that's kind of the only issue that Virgin Racing might have if they're not really liking that kind of Lopez Bird dynamic. They might feel like they need to change their driver, but in terms of pace, I think there's no concerns really over Lopez. Very talented, a very experienced driver, and I think they have a real solid lineup really in Lopez and Bird.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. Will be interesting to see whether they look for any other drivers, though. Of course, when Jose Maria Lopez was off on other duties, they had Alex Lynn stand in, and obviously he took a pole position as well. So yeah, will be interesting to see whether they do go for someone different. But also, as we look down the top 10, it wasn't the greatest race from from the apt cars, but they did what they needed to do, and on the final lap of the race, Lucas di Grassi let his teammate through for 6th place. Probably more just as a gesture, just to say thank you for sort of being his rear gunner, not just for this race, but for the rest of the season. Daniel Apt's had a lot of bad luck, as we discussed in the last race review, but Daniel Apt and Lucas di Grassi, would you say that they're one of the most dynamic duo on the grid, or do you think when it becomes a factory Audi team, they will be looking for someone different, Nathan?
I don't see why they would need to look for two other drivers. To be honest, I mean, Lucas di Grassi, I certainly don't see why Audi would feel the need to replace Lucas di Grassi. He's the reigning Formula E champion. I mean, Lucas di Grassi, I think, more than has deserved his drive. Even if you take away his championship win, he's had so many decent results. Daniel Abt, you said it yourself that he has had a fair bit of bad luck, to be honest, but Daniel Abt, he can point to several decent finishes he's had over his time in Formula E. He's experienced in the sport, he knows what he needs to do, and yes, there are arguably better drivers on the grid, but I don't know of anyone who Audi would potentially try and put in place of Daniel Abt. And I think Daniel Abt, he's experienced enough and he's proven he's got the speed to be able to retain his seat. So personally, I would be surprised if it was a changed driver lineup for next year.
Yeah, so obviously they did miss out on the team's championship, and it was in fact Renault Edams that for the 3rd season straight took home that accolade. But Nico Prost, once again, another weekend for him where he didn't light up the circuit. Obviously he had to start last for the 2nd race, but we've discussed this many times before, that if he didn't have that Prost name, would he necessarily be in the sport? Pierre Gasly, a name that's been bandied about. Josh, would you like to see him in Formula E next year, or do you think he will be off to Formula 1?
Yeah, that's quite the question, isn't it, really? I think, if he can't get into Toro Rosso next year, then definitely would love to see him in Formula E. He was right on it, wasn't he, basically, from that very first, not time in the car, but about, kind of race 1 time, he got pretty much fully up to speed and already kind of ahead of where Prost was. So I'd really, really like to see that. Shame for Nico Prost, though, retirement right in race 2 Montreal. His perfect run of finishing in the points in every single round this season was ended, and, like you mentioned, we pretty much now have a weekly Nico Prost segment. And, we're pretty good for him there, but, certainly a lot of other drivers can be doing a better job. And I think in terms of just slightly looking ahead to the future now, with loads of manufacturers coming in, a lot of drivers I think are going to be losing their seats. We're going to have a lot of new drivers coming in. I think the standard of drivers is already very high, but it's about to get, I think, a whole lot higher, and a few drivers, possibly like Nico Prost, I think, are going to be finding themselves without a seat very soon. Although he has got a 2-year deal, though, so yeah. But, maybe a few other drivers, like Adam Carroll, maybe, who's kind of struggled this year. I'm not really sure if there's going to be a place for drivers like that next year. Maybe even kind of the likes of Oliver Turvey, who hasn't exactly done a bad job. But there's certainly a lot of other drivers, I think, that are now looking to join the Formula E grid. And, drivers like Turvey, unfortunately, might find themselves without a seat.
Yeah, Nico Prost, it was interesting you mentioned there. He ended his run of 11 straight races this season of finishing in the points, and he would have actually been the only driver to do that. Obviously, though, he did get the fastest lap, so he did actually score points in every race, so he can sort of take that accolade. But as you look down the grid, there's really not that many drivers this season that have actually finished every race. You have to go all the way down to 13th in the championship, which is Robin Freins, who is the top driver to have actually reached the checkered flag at every race. The only other driver to have done that in all 12 races is actually someone you mentioned there, Adam Carroll. But of course, he wasn't sort of engaged in a lot of battles for points in a lot of those races. But it will be interesting to see what we're going to see for season 4. A few parting thoughts. Nathan, do you think it's maybe a little bit of a hollow victory for Lucas di Grassi in the sense that his title rival did miss 2 races in New York? Or do you think the fact that he actually won the title by 24 points in the end is sort of justification that he was probably just edging it over Sebastian Buemi?
I think you used the perfect phrase, and I think it is hollow victory. I definitely wouldn't say that. I mean, di Grassi deserves to win the championship. I mean, it's quite clear that the Renault Edam's car is much quicker than the Audi Apt car. So for di Grassi to win the championship with, yeah, sure, still probably the second, maybe third quickest car on the grid is an achievement. But I mean, yeah, as you said, I mean, Sebastian Buemi missed out on 2 races this season. Pierre Gasly in those 2 races, the 2 New York ePrix, scored 18 points. Suddenly, if you factor that in, if Buemi scored those 18 points, suddenly the championship gap is only down to 6 points between Buemi and di Grassi. And let's not forget that Buemi got disqualified in 2 races due to, well, things that were largely out of his control. He got disqualified from the first Montreal ePrix due to his newly repaired car being underweight. Of course, you could argue that if he didn't crash in free practice, they wouldn't have needed to repair the car and then it wouldn't have been underweight. But then you still got the first Berlin ePrix in which Buemi got disqualified, I believe, for illegal tyre pressures. Yeah, exactly. And that's something which is completely out of his personal control. Yeah, sure, it's within the team's control, but that's nothing that Buemi could influence himself. So, yeah, di Grassi certainly deserves to win the championship. I'm not going to take it away from him, but Buemi, if he didn't have his WEC commitments, and if he didn't, even if you just take away the disqualification from the Berlin ePrix, because he finished 5th that ePrix, what's that, 10 points? Yeah, if you factor that in plus Pierre Gasly's points, then Buemi would have won the championship by 4 points. So, I think, yeah, di Grassi to a certain extent was lucky to win the championship, but still thoroughly deserves it.
Yeah. And also, if you take the 4th place that he'd have got in Montreal, that's an extra 22 points, and all of a sudden it's looking very tight. But yeah, I think you put it well. Lucas di Grassi probably deserves to win at least a Formula E championship. He's been in the fight, every season so far. So yeah, that fight I'm sure will continue into season 4. But yeah, a few parting thoughts. I'll ask Josh the final question. What do you think is going to happen in season 4? Do you think it's going to be an exciting one? And yeah, do you think this season has been a good one too?
Yeah, this season's been good. I mean, honestly, I'd say it hasn't been quite as good as the first 2 seasons. I think a bit of a disappointment kind of in the middle bit. I think Monaco and Paris probably weren't kind of the best rounds. And this kind of di Grassi-Buemi rivalry has kind of been more, they haven't really been properly kind of head-to-head as much as I'd like to see, but certainly this kind of last weekend is really, these last 2 weekends really, I think New York and Montreal were 2 great events, 2 great racing circuits, great additions to the calendar. That definitely kind of made up for it, I'd say. Also, I think we had an exciting start as well in Hong Kong with kind of, 5 different people who could have won that race, 5 people different who kind of had issues but stopped them winning. So overall, it's been a good season, and optimism, I think, is more for kind of the future, kind of seasons 5 and 6, rather than season 4 itself. I think, I am, of course, excited for next season, but I'm really just can't wait, really, for kind of, more manufacturers to come in, like Mercedes, Porsche. But we do have kind of the likes of BMW and Audi coming in next year, so I think we're going to see the kind of the start of a changing landscape within Formula E next year, and possibly a different broadcaster as well, hopefully, in the UK, because, Channel 5 are certainly not the best. And hopefully, I think the audience is going to grow, because I think people are going to kind of see manufacturers are taking an interest in it, and there'll be more kind of high-profile drivers coming across. So yeah, I definitely watch the silly season market, because we have until December before the season actually starts. So that's plenty of chance for some drivers who possibly aren't getting a chance in Formula 1 or elsewhere, who could definitely be taking a look at Formula E, and maybe even the likes of Mercedes looking at their drivers for season 6. And if they are rookies, possibly like Verline, for example, maybe they're going to want to put a Verline in for season 4, train him up a bit, and then, of course, when they come in, they can take him up, possibly with someone like Rosenquist. But yeah, I'll stop my Mercedes predictions for now. A lot of excitement for the future. Season 4 should be great as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that has been the review for the rounds number 11 and 12, the finale of season 3 in Formula E. We will hopefully be doing a season review in the next probably month or so, and yeah, I'm sure the the two of you will join me then. Hopefully Toby will as well, and we will all make it onto a podcast one day. But yeah, thanks guys for joining us today. And yeah, do make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.